Hello everyone. In this video we will be doing a review of how I created audio sounds for the game Inner Space V1 that we were presented as Point Blank Music and Middlesex University students for the purposes of the assignment in the module Audio for Games, and this is the audio visual commentary video. For this module I worked on some sound design and found quite a few unique sounds that could be implemented for the game. One such sound is the production of a laser gun sound that I thought would be perfect for this game, as there is a firearm shots fired, and what makes it perfect is a gaming environment where almost any sound could be used or imagined. In Ableton Live 11 DAW or digital audio workstation, it could be noted that on MIDI channel 1 the C3 music chord of the 1/4 of a music bar is used with the Native Instruments Massive plugin to create the laser gun sound. Within Massive it is also of interest that no preset has been loaded to create the laser sound other than a musical tone is used. What did help for creating the sound settings inside of Massive, such as the oscillators, filters, inserts and master effects with various settings, as could be noted. As for effects on the laser gun sound, I used EQ8, a compressor and a stereo widening plugin tool. Then on channel 2 I use a kick drum to add some bass power to the laser gun with the kick drum loaded into Simpler, and using reverb and the EQ8 as effects and filtering the kick drum sound. As for my next sound design, I came up with producing a machine gun firing rapidly by combining the sound of a door closing with a clap sound, a laser gun sound and a kick drum. This was achieved, as would be noted, on 3/4 of a musical bar and including 4/4 per each quarter of the 3/4 of one musical bar. As for the effects to use, the Simpler sampler is used with the sound of a clap in Ableton named Clap 1 Azimuth. Some reverb is added for extra effect and the EQ8. On channel 2 my previously discussed laser sound was used to create a machine gun almost similar to the laser sound, though I did implement a more realistic machine gun sound, but with the laser gun a little louder than the machine gun sound. The idea, of course, is to match the pistol laser gun sound. Effects used on the channel 2 is the Simpler sampler, hybrid reverb and the Ableton EQ8. On channel 3 we have a door closing, which was a real recording I did during a class when lecturer Rory Walker asked the students to do a live recording of a door closing. I'm very happy that I was part of the class, as this one sound led to use of multiple purposes in sound design. In channel 4 the laser machine gun sound is the important bass sound, as without it the sound is very flat, to state the least. I again use Simpler, as seen the sound named 808 Kick Amp 04 with the EQ8 was used. Next we will have a look at how I did sound design for a heartbeat, which is for the heart room in the game. Of course, once you enter the room, the sound of the heartbeat becomes louder the closer your first person shooter gets to the heart in the room. In Ableton Live we will see I used layered kick drum sounds on channel 1 and 2, which are both MIDI channels, and in channel 3 an audio copy of the exact same kick drum as a recorded audio file. Various effects were used on each channel, as in channel 1 I use Simpler, which is basically a sampler with a kick drum sample sound loaded. Effects named the distortion army knife, a pedal effect, an audio effect rack, the EQ8 of Ableton, a drum bus, FabFilter Pro Q3 and EQ3 of Ableton, the Waves Mani M distortion drive, punch bass plugin of Ableton Live. Lastly, on channel 1 plugins is the Ableton limiter. On channel 2 it is basically a repeat of plugins used in channel 1 to have a similar effect on the two channels. Lastly, on audio channel 3 is the Ableton EQ8, the punch bass compressor effect, a lower latency effect and a compressor. For the explosion sound, I did some experimenting with kick toner, which turned out to be the perfect match for producing an explosion sound effect. On channel 1 I used the 808 kick drum sample and then implemented the kick drum toner with an EQ8 to achieve the sound of the explosion. On channel 2 I used the sound of big boom kick drum, which allows the bigger, longer stretch of sound for the explosion. I then implemented the kick drum toner on channel 2 as well, with a big bass sound to a sound that is instantly converted to a big explosion sound thanks to the kick toner. In channel 3 I dropped the sound of a deep kick 1 warp drive Madzak 64 pad lab, which came included with Ableton Live 11 samples. In channel 3 I included only the EQ8 to filter the bass sound. If taking a look at the master channel, a compressor and limiter were used, as the bass sounds are very powerful in the sound and a limiter is best, as we know, for such rather big sounds such as this explosion. For the bullet impact sound I went and used a kick thump flutter sample from Ableton Samples on channel 1. For effects on channel 1 I used the EQ8 and the reverb. On channel 2 I layered the sound with the same effects used on channel 1. On the master channel I used the overdrive effect, where I used some drive and tone settings to better the sound. Also an amp plugin, the Ableton EQ8 and a Waves L1 stereo limiter. For the Germa Blaster reload sound I used a paperclip stapler on channel 1 with reverb in the effects plugins. In channel 2 within Ableton I loaded a kick drum from Ableton Samples into Simpler and also added some reverb for effect settings and some filters for a minimal bass and more room reverb sound of the reload effect. On the master channel I loaded the FabFilter Pro Q3 for filtering the sound more with less bass and higher and more mid-pitch sound for the reload effect in sound design. For the game I produced 4 songs. The main song title used for Inner Space V1 is the song named Game Sounds and Music Project in Ableton Live. I saved the audio files under the folder name Own Music. I included extra songs produced, the song named Level 1, which was specifically produced for a pause in the game. A deep and mysterious sound was the idea behind this production that brings a feeling of relaxation while sounding almost mysterious, that could build to adding some tension in the music and wanting to play the game more. For the main song named Game Sounds and Music Project, I used transitions to play and move to 4 various sections of the track play. At the start the song is almost muffled with a dull and less bright sound in loop 1, which then transitions to a part or loop 2 of the track with a more clear treble sound, and then again transitions back to loop 1 and continues the loop cycle. With the integration of sound created and produced in Ableton Live, the sound I exported as a .wav files of 41 0.000 Hz or 44.1 kilohertz and 24-bit depth. I then simply dragged and dropped the audio.wav files into their correct audio channels in Fmod to match the sound with the appropriate game sound that was open and available after deleting some of the files from the audio channels. In this example, I will demonstrate how I moved this goo slime room 2.wav file from my recorded sounds folder into the ambience folder, and under the goo slime room folder into Fmod under ambience, and the main ambience under the audio loop tag slime room. The .wav file is simply mouse clicked and then held down with the left mouse key, dragged from the folder into the open Fmod audio channel and slot. The .wav file is neatly resized to fit into the loop and could then be heard in the game, with the idea of when you enter green slime room, your FPS or first person shooter or the game viewer will hear the change of the main ambience adapting to the sound of the green slime bubbling on the ground, with the player's footsteps changing to the walking in the mud sound that is visible next to the walking on concrete sound under the footsteps folder in the player folder. This is the end, and thank you for watching.